Hey, it's the Midnight Raven, and today I want to try something a bit different. So if you're not new to my channel, you know I love things like murders, serial killers, cold cases, and the latter. And usually I'll do a video where I'll have the writing on the screen, but someone had said, why didn't I try doing one where I talk to you about the murder? And here we are today, giving this a try. So this isn't going to be a long video because it's not a very long case. This was the case of the Torrey Pines beach murders in Southern California and the murder of Barbara. And we're going to talk today about her murder, and then there's going to be a part 2 to this because there is a second murder that may be connected to Barbara's. So today we're talking about the Torrey Pines beach murders that happened in 1978. A beach in Torrey Pines in Southern California was a hive for young teens and people living out their beach lives in the 1970s. Barbara Nataeus and Jim Alt, both aged 15. Barbara was a beautiful, young, bright, aspiring cheerleader, and Jim was a blonde-headed surfer boy. They both liked the outdoors and had a thing for going to the beach. On August the 12th, 1978, Barbara's parents had decided they wanted to go away for the weekend, and they were going to leave Barbara along with her siblings with a friend of the family. The friend of the family offered to look after them, but Barbara decided that she had other plans. Her and Jim and a friend called Rick were going to jump in a car and head down to the Torrey Pines beach and spend the day. Sounds perfectly fine, but you will see. So they went down to the beach and the pair hopped in the car along with their friend Rick and his girlfriend, and they drove down to Torrey Pines Beach where they spent the day up until around 9 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, most of the younger teens, families and people that had gone to the beach that day had decided they were going home. It was late, but unfortunately the teens had decided they were going to stay at the beach. Rick and his girlfriend were going to sleep in the car, and Barbara and Jim were going to hang out and sleep on the beach in sleeping bags. Sounds perfectly harmless, two teens hanging out at the beach. So at 9 o'clock, everybody gone home, and the teens had decided to spend the night at the beach. They would get their sleeping bags, and both Barbara and Jim would head down to the beach to spend the night on the beach, and Rick and his girlfriend would sleep in the car. So with their sleeping bags, they headed down to the beach, they tucked themselves in, and they fell asleep. The next morning, though, Jim would awake, confused, disorientated, and a bit lost on where he was. He would come to the realization that Rick's car was still parked in the beach car park, and he would make his way up to the car park with a slight kind of haziness to his head and his sight. He would make it to the car where he would bang on the windows and he would try and get a response from his sleeping friends. When he banged on the window, his friends didn't necessarily recognize him at first, as it came to a realization that Jim was covered in blood. He also looked like he'd been severely beaten and attacked around his face, as his face had swelled and he was covered in blood. Rick would open the door and ask, oh my God, what had gone on, and would find Jim covered in blood with supposed injuries to his head. Jim looked as though he'd been beaten severely. His face was swollen. Jim's only concern at that point was, where was Barbara? What had happened? So he asked Rick, had she seen Barbara since they'd gone down to the beach last night, and Rick and his girlfriend had both said no, they had gone to sleep, and that Barbara and Jim had gone down to the beach and they hadn't heard from them since. So they all ran down to the beach looking and calling out for Barbara, and going back to the place that Rick believed they had been sleeping, as he was still a little disorientated. He seemed to have a cut on the side of his head, which may explain some of what had gone on. They would reach the sleeping bags to a most shocking, horrific discovery. Barbara lay on the sand, lifeless. She had, from what we could gather at that point in time, had been severely assaulted, attacked, and was laying next to a blood-stained pillow and a blood-stained sleeping bag. Deep breath, huh? So the police were called to the beach, and of course Rick and the other people, his girlfriend and Jim, were questioned and taken away for questioning. The scene of what looked like a vicious attack had showed that Barb had been assaulted, strangled, and viciously beaten by a supposed rock or log. On further inspection, they also noticed that she had had, and I warn you, she had had half her breast removed, reasons unknown. Jim had severe injuries. Of course, he was disorientated when he woke up. He had a severe head injury and had to be put in a coma for a couple of days, where he was then re-questioned about the occurrence from the night before, what had happened when they left Rick, and what had happened when he woke up the next morning. After being questioned, the police had no evidence to prove that Jim had done anything. He was covered in blood and it looked like he'd been attacked himself, so the police weren't necessarily going to jump to any conclusions. He was a suspect because he was the last one to see Barbara alive, and that the fact that he was covered in blood would suggest that he needed to be looked at further. So, after being questioned and with a lack of evidence and no leads, there were no witnesses, the case would eventually go cold. Jim, who had himself been attacked, was then not classed as a suspect anymore. The case continued to go cold with no leads and no more evidence linking to anyone. But was it a random attack, or was there more to the case? 8 years later, another girl was found dead on the same beach. May this have been an isolated incident, or were the two murders connected? Were 8 years apart murders that happened on the same beach connected in some way? So to solve the death of Barbara Nateas, it would take the death of another woman to solve the 8-year-old murder of what happened to Barbara Nateas on the Torrey Pines beach. Her death may have been an isolated incident, but is there a chance that the two murders were connected? You'll only have that answer if you watch part 2 to find out part 2 of the Torrey Pines beach murders, coming very soon. So I hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2 is going to go into the second part of the Torrey beach murders, where a girl called Claire had been also murdered on the same beach. The question is, was Barbara and Claire's murder connected, or were they two separate incidents? You will find out in part 2, coming very, very soon. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below before I post part 2. Do you think it was an isolated incident? Is there a chance that a murder of one lady can be connected to a murder of another lady that happened on the same beach with an 8-year gap? Let me know down below. Tell me what you also thought of this kind of filming. Let me know down below whether you liked it, whether you didn't like it. Room for improvement, and you will see part 2 very, very soon. If you want to support the channel, remember PayPal, Super Chat, or just support the channel by giving it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. If you like this video, also follow me on Instagram as well. I'm the Midnight Raven over there, and we will find out in part 2 whether Barbara died of a vicious attack or whether it is an actual serial killer / murderer. And I will see you for part 2 coming very, very soon. Take care and thanks for watching. Bye, guys.